All right, back in Blender here, we need to export this out one more time for Unity. Now, when we exported it for Substance Painter, I went ahead and added or included the tire and the wheel, but we're going to need to keep those separate when taking it into Unity. But before we do any of that, we need to make sure that this is real-world scale. And that's because in Unity, the lighting and the physics all expect real-world scale, real-world sizes. So what we need to do is figure out how big or small this should be. And what I've done is gone to Google and I searched for Oshkosh MATV dimensions. And right here we've got the length, width, and height. We have it in inches and millimeters. So if 6,270 millimeters, this is going to be 6.2 meters. So let's create a reference object of these dimensions, and then we'll scale the vehicle to fit those. All right, so let's come over here, and I guess first of all what I'll do is I'll just hide all of this right here, and I'll choose the scene collection, and let's just create a cube. Here we go. And I'll go to the side view, and let's go to wireframe. All right, so let's take this cube and let's get it to the correct dimensions. If I hit the N key to open up the sidebar, we can see over here we've got dimensions. And we can plug in the numbers from Google into here to get the proper size. So let's see, we've got length 6.2 meters. So the length is the y-axis. So let's type in here in dimensions 6.2. Enter. And there we go. There's our 6.2 meters. All right. Let's tumble around and let's work on the width. So the width is 2.49 meters. Let's do that. X 2.49. There we go. And then the height, 2.7. So the height, of course, is going to be this z-axis. So what did I say? 2.7. There we go. Let's make sure 2.7, 2.49, 6.27. Now I could do 6.27. Let's do that. 6.27. There we go. Okay. So now if I bring this up and set it on the grid right there, that's how big our vehicle should be. So let's bring everything back and let's take a look. I'll bring back the wheel, the vehicle, tire low, spare tire low, machine gun, and glass. So all of these need to be this size. And as we can see here, they're too small. So we need to scale this up a bit. I need to select all of these. So what I'm going to do is take this cube and I'm going to call this reference size. And I need to make sure I don't accidentally select it when I'm scaling this up. To do that, I'll come over here to the outliner and pull this down. And I want to enable this selectable toggle right here. And what that'll do, it'll give me this icon. So I can deselect this. So now I can't select the cube at all. All right, so what that does for me is I can select one of these. I can hit the A key without selecting that cube. And now let's, to scale this up, we need to scale from the grid here, from the center of the grid. So let's move this origin of everything. Let's come up here to Object, Set Origin, and move that to the 3D cursor here. Now that that's there, let's go ahead and scale this up to fit our cube here. So I'll just hit the S key, and I'm going to scale it up. And I believe this cube, or these dimensions, are for the main chassis here. I'm just going to scale it up right about to there so that that cube encompasses the main body of the vehicle. We've got these extras, the machine gun, the turret, things like that, kind of sticking out, but I believe the dimensions is really just this part in here. All right, so now we've got our vehicle the proper size. I'm going to go ahead and hide the cube here, hide that. Let's go back to solid mode. And now that we've scaled this up, we've got a problem with our scale over here. It is uniform, but it isn't all one. So we need to really have that applied. Let's do that. Let's press Control A and apply our scale to everything. There we go. So we have that applied now. And I'm going to go ahead and press Control S and save our scene here. All right, now let's work on exporting this out. We do need to deselect everything and hide the tire for now. Let's hide the tire low and the wheel here. And so everything else is going to go into one FBX file that we're going to export for Unity. But we're going to need to reposition this, or at least reposition the origin of all the objects. And then, yes, we're going to have to actually reposition it down to the center of the grid. And this would usually be okay, this kind of thing where it has an offset from the center of the grid. That would usually be okay for most objects if you're importing into a game engine. Say if you have a building a block away and it's offset from the center a certain distance, then when you take it into Unity, it will still be offset from the center that same distance. But for this, we're going to parent the vehicle directly to the default cube of the vehicle tools. It has a cube and 4 wheels that we're going to parent everything to. So we need to get the pivot points or the origins in the proper place. So if we select everything with the A key, we've got the origin here. Now, we really need to move it up into a different place. I think we need to move it up into here. So if we were to say, maybe change to the cursor tool here and kind of click, I don't know, somewhere around in here. We're going to have to do some adjusting anyway once we get it into Unity. But for this, let's just see, well, that's not quite in the center, is it? So what we can do is come over here to the View tab, and in the x-axis, we could type in 0 and move it into the center of the grid there. And then, so it's kind of in the center of the grid along the x-axis, but I just wanted it kind of at the bottom of the cab here. So now I need to change back to the Move tool, the Transform tools. If we select everything, I'll select the cab and hit the A key. And now let's move the origin of all of this to that 3D cursor. So I'll come up here and go to Object, Set Origin to 3D Cursor. Okay, there it is. So now what we need to do is move this to the center of the grid. And to do that, we can first move the cursor with Shift S1, and then snap the vehicle to that. So now we can press Shift S, and we can press the 8 key or select this selection to cursor. And there we go. So that's the way we want to export the vehicle. All right, let's give that a try. With all of this still selected, I'm going to come up to File, Export, and FBX. And I'm going to be sure and choose this selected objects. All right, let's go to our exports, and let's call this, well, what should we call this? I'll call this Vehicle Final. Let's do that. That'll be hopefully our final export. There we go. Now the tire, let's take a look at that. Let me turn these off. Let me deselect everything and turn these off. And let's turn the wheel and the tire low back on. All right, so with this, it looks like our cursor or our origin is right in the center of the geometry for the tire. That's good. For the wheel, however, it's still over here. So we really need the origin of the wheel and the tire to be in the same place. So what let's do is select the tire and press Shift S and move that cursor to the origin of that object. Then we'll select the wheel and let's move the origin to the 3D cursor there. So now both objects have the same origin point, right? Now we need to move it into the center of the grid. Let's press Shift S1 to move that cursor. And then with both of these selected, let's press Shift S and choose Selection to Cursor. And there we go. So now we've got that in the center of the grid. But here's an issue I have, is that I'm not sure which way this needs to be turned. If it needs to be turned in the positive X or the negative X for it to work in the vehicle tools. We only need one tire, but it needs to be facing in a particular direction, and I don't remember which way that is. So What we'll do then is we're going to do two. We're going to export two of these. We've got our scale at 1s and our rotation at 0. That's good. So I'm going to export one facing this way, and then I'm going to spin it around 180 degrees and export it the other way as well, just to make sure we have our bases covered. So I'm going to go up to File, Export, and FBX. Once again, make sure that Selected Objects is checked. And let's call this Wheel Final. And I'm going to call this _L because it's facing toward the left side of the vehicle. Let's do that. So I'm going to export that. Now, with all of this selected, let's press RZ180 and spin it around the other way. We've got rotation in the Z, so I'm going to press Control A and apply the rotation. There we go. Then I'm going to go to File, Export, FBX, and we'll call this _R because it's facing toward the right side of the vehicle. So let's export that. Oh, and Selected Objects is still checked. That's good. Okay. And export that. All right. Now I think we are able to go into Unity and begin setting up our project so that we can bring our vehicle and our textures and put them all together. So that's coming up next.